So I have here my friend Caleb, and he's about to go shoot some stuff, and he had some questions because he's never actually shot with this camera before. This is a Sony FS7, and I wanted to just use it as a camera to kind of go over with and interact with Caleb, so if he had any questions about it, we could kind of go over it and figure out the ergonomics of it, what he should be looking for, what are all the basic settings, stuff like that. Now, it's very similar to any other camera that you might be working with. It's sort of a mid-range videographer dock camera. A lot of it's going to be different than any other camera you might have, but the basics are there. The basic buttons, the basic menus, the inputs, the ergonomics, those are things that you can find on any camera. They're just maybe a little different, but you still got to be aware of where they are and what their functionality is. You ready?
Ready.
So what exactly are you planning on shooting?
So I'm going to be shooting a docu-commercial. So it's a little bit of a documentary and some glamour shots here and there to make it pop out, not make it your average documentary.
So you're trying to shoot a documentary that's going to look more commercial and look prettier and stuff like that. Okay, well let's just go over like the basics of the camera. I know you've shot before, but you haven't necessarily messed with this camera. Basically, obviously you got here the lens. There's a lens release up here. It looks like you actually rented a Metabones. So this actual F7 is not equipped with an EF mount for a Canon lens. So you got an adapter to then adapt it to a Canon lens. Very cool. So I'm just going to spin around here so we can show the cameras here. But when you're setting up, all your basic functions are here. You can see this big dial right here is going to be where you change your ND filters. You can hear it click, their physical NDs. It's cool, the FS7 has like actual names for it, so you can actually see what they are, and you can hear it. Down here, it looks like you have a focus push button. That'll like help you do autofocus, and like you can kind of see. S&Q is really cool on the FS7. It's a fast way to get to speed and quality. So you can change like the speed of your frame rate, or you can change the quality as far as resolution goes and stuff like that. Iris will let you see how there's a little line there. It took me forever to figure this out on this camera, but this is where you change the f-stop.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I'm sure you messed with that a little bit. But yeah, it took me forever. Sometimes it's up here and this will work too, but typically a quick way to know is that's where you're going to change the f-stop. You can hold that and turn it off, and that'll, if you push that, that'll keep you from bumping it. If you're set, I'll turn that off. Something we haven't talked about in this class, but the L, M, and H are low, medium, high for gain. Within the camera, you can set that to ISO. So you can put low being 200, you can set medium to like 600, and you can set high to be like 1200. So when you're running and gunning, you can easily switch ISOs by just flipping that switch. I would set it to ISO and not gain, because gain's more, I mean, they're basically the same thing, but digital. White balance, something we haven't talked about in this class. But white balance, you can preset them to A and B. The cool thing about white balance is that you can take a white piece of paper wherever you are, and there should be, see the white balance set button here? You can take that, put it on A or B, and hold this button down with a white or a gray piece of paper in whatever environment you're shooting on, and it will lock itself to either the A or the B. You can switch to preset, and then within the menu, you can set to like tungsten or daylight or whatever you're doing. I would say like wherever you find, you're moving all over the place, right?
Moving all over
yeah.
the place,
Yeah. So I would set A to tungsten and B to daylight or something like that, and then that way you can just switch on the fly really fast. Just go hold pieces of paper where you're at. Sometimes the light's different in different countries and stuff like that. This full auto button is really interesting on the FS7. If you push and hold that, it'll make everything go full auto. Which means it'll select your f-stop, it'll select your ISO, it'll select your frame, it'll select your, not your frame rate, it'll select your shutter. It's just like a foolproof way. So if you're running and gunning, you didn't have time to set anything up, just push that button and it'll get you like an okay exposure. Just depends on what you're looking at. Obviously a record button up here. This is where you can get into all your menus and systems right here. This menu button here will let you pop the menu up here, and then this is weird for the F5, but this is how you select, and you push in on it to select something. There's soft keys here, so like you can kind of shift back and forth, left and right. The thumbnail version will get you to play back what you're previously looking at. So that's when you want to review stuff. You can push that and get into that mode. All this other stuff, like you can select shutter, you can select white balance, you can select ISO and gain, and that will open up while you're shooting, it'll open you up in there and you can kind of move around and push that. So here's a memory card slot. Sony does have their own cards, but we can talk more about that later. But you can see you got some nice big 128 gig cards. Those just go in, push in. You can put an SD card in, I think, to load your own settings or your own look, if you like. It's a little kind of complicated. So that's good. Headphone jack to listen to the shotgun that you don't have on here. It's funny, I think the FS7 has an internal mic somewhere. Have you messed with that yet?
Not yet.
I believe it's like kind of hidden around here somewhere, but it does exist. That's it for this side of the camera. I feel like it's pretty good functionality. Here, your monitor is kind of cool in the FS7 because you can adjust your peaking for exposure and your zebras, or your peaking for focus and your zebras for exposure. You can turn it off and on there. Also, the contrast will help you look. I don't know if I trust this monitor for color, maybe for exposure, but I would really look at your zebras, and I believe you can pull up a histogram on here if you like. Your on-off switch is down here. It's always hidden. I always thought that was silly. I'll turn it on. And then your mirror, if you want to like flip this around or somewhere, you can kind of flip it around. The cool thing about the top of the FS7, which a lot of cameras typically do have nowadays, the C series do, and you can buy handles for like DSLRs and stuff, but you can hold it low and you can record from up here, or you can put it on hold. And when you have a servo, you don't have a servo lens here, but you can zoom in, zoom out. You can put a hot shoe light up there if you wanted to, or a different mic. The FS7 has this weird grip thing going on here with their monitor, and then you can put a shotgun mic up here. On this side, it looks like we've got more audio inputs, and we do have audio stuff over here. We can go back over there and look at it. But are you using a shotgun mic or wireless mics or something like that?
I will be using a shotgun mic. Yes.
Cool. Yeah. So you would just you put it up here and you run it down here, and then you can adjust line in mic. I'm really bad at that type of stuff, but it is important to know if you're doing dock run and gun stuff. You can do mic that needs power, or if your thing has power, you can switch it over. You're not using any monitors, but typically if you're sending out a monitor on set, you can send a SDI out to a director or to your first AC or to a nicer, better monitor up here. This is where you'd come out of there. Typically, DSLRs don't have that, but bigger cameras will. Yeah, man, I feel like that's pretty good. Back to the audio, here's the board. You can put it on auto, but sometimes it like doesn't look as nice or doesn't sound as nice. Or you can go into manual and then you can physically adjust the levels of it. It's cool that they have this door on it to kind of protect you from messing with it, but you can push in and like spin if you had to. So looks just really quickly on your settings that you want to go over to check. Remember, so this camera shoots 4K, so you're actually at 496 by 2160. I don't know if you're going to shoot 4K on the day, but that's going to eat up. You got nice big cards, so you should be fine. Your frame rate's here, it's 2997. All this information is typically on every camera. It'll tell you on the display what you're looking at, so you can tell what frame rate you're at. 29.7, what resolution, 4096 by 2160, the amount of battery left, your white balance. Then you have no GPS signal. Some of these cameras you can set up to have GPS, which is odd. There's no sound levels because we don't have it set to internal mics. I think if I actually put it here, you might pick something up. Yeah, see, no. We'll deal with that later. You have time code. TCG is time code generator. It looks like you're in record mode. You can do free run if you want, but record mode, since it's just you, it's probably fine. It has, you have your, what do you call it, the shake off, like it'll do reduction, movement reduction, but not with this lens. And then you just have a whole bunch of other information that isn't necessarily important. You have a fourth ND in. It'll tell you on the screen, so that's with it out. So it'll tell you clear, it's on standby, so we're not rolling. For some reason, you get 1/500th of a shutter, which is a little odd. You can change that. It looks like it's on auto, so it's doing that for you. But yeah, you'd have to go in and adjust that. And then your cards here tells you how much you have left. A lot of cool stuff, man. I think a really cool thing about the FS7 is that you've got here, and I can try to pull this around, you've got like a whole remote system here. With one hand, you can record, you can go through the menus, you can set these buttons to be what you want. If you had a servo, you could use this zooming in, zooming out, and then this will adjust the f-stop. There's a slider button up here. Okay, so hopefully this was super helpful for you. I know this is like a different camera than most people are going to be using, but I just wanted to kind of go over this general points of a camera. And all cameras tend to have similar things that you need to be looking for.